Hey everybody, Winstreak here. Welcome to the Construct 3 side of our boss tutorial. Today I'll be showing you exactly how to code out our boss. So after following along, you'll be able to use the same mechanics. A quick recap here. We're gonna start out with the collection of the power buttons. Then we'll move into firing the special attack, which is the only way to hurt the boss. And I'll show you how each hit increases our boss stats. And then the two special features after 2 and 3 hits, as well as the color change and blood splatter. So to start it all off, we need to look at our buttons. We have 3 buttons placed, 2 on screen and 1 is hidden off screen. These are all the same object, aka I just copy pasted the second and the third one. And since they're all the same, I don't have to do any special treatment. So essentially I write code for if I touch a button, it has this effect. And the collision will choose the button that I'm currently hitting to change the animation on. Then I use globals to hold all of my values. So I just edit those up by 1. Those are both called power buttons down and attack charge. And if power buttons down reaches 2, that means I've touched the 2 visible power buttons, and that is when we call the place the third one. And I simply just set the position, but I have to call that one specifically by UID since I am using the same instance of 3. So that's the only time I specifically call out a button, when I bring the third one on screen and then off screen again. And then once you collect that third power button, you can press space and fire the attack. Looking at our attack portion of the code, pressing space and having attack charge equal to 3 means I touched all 3 power buttons. It's just a separate check to verify that you're ready to attack, and if you do that, it's going to reset both attack charge and power buttons down all the way back down to 0. Call the function buttons up and create my attack object, which is at my hero's image point 1, which I made specifically for the attack to come out of, just so I have a set spot for my attack to start. And looking further into the function call buttons up, if you're not sure what a function is, it's just a small grouping of code. It's meant to save time because you can call it from anywhere else in your project and you don't have to rewrite the same lines of code. It'll just do the same thing, give you your answer, and let you continue on with your code. I made this as a function because I was initially going to add multiple different ways for the buttons to come up, like a timer or boss skills. For this little project I decided against it, just so I didn't overwhelm the code portion of this. Made it a little bit easier to explain. So I have a function that I only call once, which is a waste, but it is there for later. If I end up building this project any bigger, I can continue adding on with the function, and it doesn't actually hurt anything in the code. Looking at it, our function simply sets all the button animations to up and moves the UID 13 power button back off stage. Now anytime a bullet is created, we have a few bullet behavior settings to force in. And essentially I just turn on the bullet behavior and set its acceleration and speed, and then make sure it's going in the right direction. This is done by just checking whether or not the hero is mirrored or not mirrored at the time of the attack creation. And then I just do an angle of motion left or right. So moving on to hitting the boss. If the attack hits the boss, which I check by if it's overlapping the boss, and it only triggers once, we don't want it to subtract 1 health from the boss every tick. We just want it to trigger that one time. Then we will subtract 1 from the boss's health. This will bring us to the boss health stage. If he has 3 life, all we're going to do is change the platform features. We'll be setting accelerate to 2000, decelerate to 2000, gravity to 2000, and max fall speed to 2600. And these are all about a 500 increase from what they currently started at. And then we also give them a pink hue with set color. I also call out a create red square that has a bullet behavior on it. And I set the direction of the bullet to a random direction. And this gives the splatter effect, which then I call 5 times for this one. And I increase that multiple times later. And this is a lot like the particle effect, but with them being sprites instead of particles, it was easier for me to set them to stop on solids or stop on the tile maps that I have down. We want it to hit something and then give the illusion of drying up, so we just have it disable the bullet effect. We're on collision, and then it slowly fades out over time. We then have our health 2 and health 1, which is the same idea for tweaking the boss's platform amounts by around 500 each. And then we add the more blood and add more color, and then each one has a special trigger, which I just set inside the boss's instance booleans, and one is called fallout, which starts false, and the other one's called rocks, which starts false. So at 2 hits I set fallout to true, and 3 hits rocks to true. Looking at our boss's jump code, we see the booleans come into play. As long as our boss is not playing death animation, if he touches the ground at all, it restarts his jump animation. And at a specific frame in his jump animation, we set him to vector y minus 1700, which gives him that huge jump up in the air. And at that same time, if either of those booleans are true, we call their functions. So the fallout function, pretty spaghetti code. It's just line after line, pretty much saying the same thing. This could have been written smaller, but it gets the job done, and I only had to write it once, so I wasn't too worried. This is how we move the ground up slowly. We essentially grab two starting points, one to the left of the boss, one to the right of the boss. We got to make sure they are right in the middle of the actual tile map for the grounds, so they line up. And then we call a function for the left side and a function for the right side, each one moving 32 pixels over, so they line up with the next tile map. And these are just sprites. They just look the same as the tile map. And on creation, these sprites move up 23 pixels with the move behavior. And once the sprites move to their final destination, they're destroyed. And then of course, if our hero touches them, it'll do the damage effects. And then for the rock function, I'll do a random call to check if it's either 0 or 1. And remember, int works like floor and construct. So random 2 gives us that number between 0 and 1.99, and then we round it down by using int. If we get a 0, 2 of my rocks go to the left and 1 to the right, otherwise the opposite. We simply just create those and give them an angle for their bullet. And then since my first video did add a 10-degree angle modifier, that just makes the rocks not necessarily go in the exact same direction every time. And then we don't want them to last forever, so I throw a timer on them. If they're alive for 4 seconds, we just destroy them. That way there's not a bunch of just rocks hidden off screen falling forever, taking up our memory. Voila, that's all the code you need to understand to put your boss together. Additionally, I'll be throwing a link in the description to fight my boss on itch.io, as well as a link to get a look at the code. That way you can actually see it, and it makes it a little easier for you to understand it that way. That's all I have for you today. I'll catch you all next time.